Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents When Parents Hurt. Compassionate Strategies When You and Your Grown Child Don't Get Along. By Joshua Coleman, Ph.D. Narrated by Boehmer. 1. Parents on the Firing Line. Dear Mom, I have decided that I don't want to have any contact with you ever again. Please don't write or call me anymore. I can't stop thinking about all of the ways that you were never there for me when I was growing up. Whenever I see or talk to you, I just end up feeling depressed, angry, and upset for weeks afterwards. It's just not worth it to me, and I need to get on with my life. Please respect my wishes, and don't contact me again. Letter from Clarice, 23, to her mother Fiona, 48. Fiona sat on my couch in her first visit, without looking at me or saying anything. She reached into her purse and handed me the letter from her daughter, as if to say, "This says it all." And it did. As a psychologist, I've counseled many adult children like Fiona's daughter. In some cases, I've helped them to craft letters just like hers, or supported them in cutting off contact with a mother, a father, or both. I know the finality that these letters can portend. It's a deadly serious business, and the stakes are huge. A therapist has no business giving advice in this arena unless he or she has carefully thought about the long-term implications of these decisions. I felt for this desolate mother sitting in front of me because I knew that the letter could be the last contact that Fiona would ever have with her daughter. A flood of questions were already circulating in my mind. Why is her daughter so angry at her? What has Fiona done to try to repair it? How capable has she been of taking responsibility or listening in a non-defensive way to her daughter's complaints? How receptive will she be to my recommendations for how to respond? "I'm sorry," I said, handing back the letter. "That must be so painful." Fiona looked relieved, as though she had expected me to blame her. "I worry about her all of the time, and can't stop wondering what horrible thing I did to make my own child turn against me. I'm sure I made my fair share of mistakes, but I wasn't that different with her than I was with the other three." She started sobbing. "Clarice was always the hardest of my 4 children. Even when she was young, she seemed so impossible to please. We did everything for her, individual therapy, family therapy, medication, you name it. Nothing seemed to make her feel happy or connected to us. My other kids resented her because she sucked all of the time, energy, and money out of the family that should have gone to all 4 of them. She won't talk to my other kids either, except for the youngest." "It's really heartbreaking," she said, grabbing for the Kleenex. "It is so goddamned heartbreaking." Are parents to blame? Not that long ago, I would have assumed that Fiona must have done something terribly wrong to cause her daughter to respond in such a dramatic way. My training as a psychologist taught me that the problems of the adult child can always be linked to some form of mistreatment from the parent. While this is often true, it doesn't hold for all families. And when it is true, it's often a far more complex picture than most therapists and self-help authors realize. As I worked with Fiona over the next few months, I came to understand that she had been a reasonable and conscientious mother. As her story and others illustrate, it is possible to be a devoted and conscientious parent and still have it go badly. You can do everything right, and your child can still grow up and not want to have the kind of relationship with you that you always hoped you'd have. You can do everything right, and your child may still end up with a drug problem that costs you thousands of dollars and endless heartache. You can do everything right, and your child may still choose the kind of friends or partners that you never imagined she would have chosen, because these people seem so lost and are dragging your child into losing more. You can do everything right, and your child can still fail to launch a successful adulthood despite being gifted and talented or possessing an IQ that most people would kill for. Very few of us escape feeling guilt toward our offspring. It may be part of our evolutionary heritage, a way that nature hardwires us to stay sensitive to them even after they're grown. And some parents are responsible for transgressions that are harmful to their children. Child abuse, incest, neglect, and alcoholism are a few of the more egregious examples. However, whether the parenting mistakes are subtle or serious, real or imagined, today's parents are completely confused by their children's failures and accusations. They need guidance and support for themselves, not more advice about their children. Who is this book for? This book is written for parents who carry enormous feelings of guilt, shame, and regret about how they treated their children. Parents raising children with a diagnosis or temperament that makes them harder to parent, and maybe harder to love. Parents whose divorces have created a profound change in the quality of their relationship with their child. This includes children who are rejecting or blaming them, refusing contact with them, or seem to be damaged by the divorce. Parents whose current or ex-spouses are dedicated to bringing them down in the eyes of their child. Parents who were devoted and conscientious, yet their adult child refuses contact with them. Parents whose partner, parent/step-parent, boyfriend/girlfriend, makes it difficult to provide the kind of safety or nurturance that they want to give their children. Parents who are mismatched in some important way with their child. For example, a successful and driven parent with a learning disabled child. A vulnerable, insecure parent with an aggressive and rejecting child. A depressed parent with an active, risk-taking child. Parents who are wounded by their grown child's inability to launch a happy or successful life. The wounds caused by teens and adult children. Since parenting a child at any age has its challenges and provocations, I could have started with childbirth and continued through each developmental stage. However, I have chosen to limit my topic to the wounds caused by teenagers and adult children. I start with teenagers because adolescence is the place where some of the hardest confrontations begin to be waged between parent and child. While many parents hope or pray that their young child will one day outgrow her problems, her trapeze-like mood swings, her difficulty fitting in, her defiant and insufferable temperament, most begin to realize by adolescence that their soon-to-be adult may be no different and no easier than the very same child was at ages 2, 5, and 10. It's only the hair and clothing that have changed. Adult children are another story. Financial strings aside, a young adult has almost total discretion to spend time with you or not. The only time younger children have similar latitude is in divorce, where the courts or living arrangements enable the child to have much more choice over how much time he will spend with a non-custodial parent. In other words, adult children are even freer to launch salvos against the parents' happiness and well-being, to have their own versions of how they were raised, and to state those claims with authority. It was their childhood, not yours. Their experience, not yours. And now, in case it wasn't perfectly clear, their adulthood. With adult children, closeness or distance is negotiated on an equal playing field, a field with rules unheard of before in history. Not a parenting book. For all of its glory and gut-busting work, parenting is a dangerous undertaking. You put in long hours, examine every decision and action, do the best you can, and yet the child who once adored and needed you can come to reject, shame, or belittle you. The youth who was to be your greatest source of joy and pride can become your greatest source of worry and disappointment. The sweet kid who wrote you love notes and gave you hugs has written you off, or gives you the finger instead. This book was written for parents who have concluded, after years of therapy, medication trials, soul-searching, or family interventions, that they should stop listening to all of those other parents, pediatricians, psychologists, and talk show experts who say that if they only do steps 1 through 7, they too can have the relationship with their child that they always wanted. They have decided that these well-meaning advisors are naive, misinformed, or plain ignorant and wrong, because, frankly, they are. Their advice is based on a parenting model that offers little to those who are greeted by pain, guilt, or disappointment every time they open the door to their teenager's room or try to get their grown child to return their calls. Upcoming chapters. Chapter 2 will help to provide clarity about where you are right now with your child and will help you understand how you got there. It outlines the many ways you can become hurt as a parent and will provide questions to help you begin to think about how you got there and where you need to go. While all parents experience feelings of guilt, some parents are chronically plagued by the belief that they have damaged their children, sometimes without any corresponding evidence. Chapters 3 and 4 are written to provide guidance for parents who feel guilty about their behavior in the past, or who need help dealing with their child's accusations in the present. Our current ideals about parenting and children are historically unprecedented. Most of our ideas about what children need and who parents are supposed to be are flawed in many, many ways. These ideas greatly contribute to parents' feelings of shame and failure. They contribute to children and others feeling entitled to blame parents for the children's problems, inadequacies, or poor relationship with the parent. Parents and children are constructs whose definitions change with every century, if not every few decades. Chapter 5 seeks to place today's parent in a historical and economic context. Chapter 6 examines the shame that so many parents feel when they have strained relationships with a child. We'll examine the basis for your vulnerability to shame and provide guidelines and exercises for working through those feelings. Chapter 7 details the problems that occur when a parent and child are temperamentally mismatched. A mismatch occurs when what comes naturally to the parent is completely at odds with who the child is, and sometimes at odds with what he or she needs. We'll look at how temperamental mismatches can create long-term conflict in the parent-child relationship and provide recommendations and solutions. Teenagers can cause parents to feel inadequate, enraged, scared, and hopeless. Today's parents of teens face special challenges because of the peer group's increasing power to supplant the parent's authority. Chapter 8 is written to help parents manage the thorny cluster of emotions provoked by difficult teenagers and to provide guidance on how and when to intervene. Chapter 9 looks at the guilt, disruption, and loss that parents feel with divorce. It will also examine the ways that ex-spouses and step-family issues may contribute to the alienation divorced parents sometimes feel with their children. Guidelines and exercises will be provided. While divorce can strain the relationships between parents and children, A difficult marriage can do the same. In Chapter 10, we look at the wounds that occur when your spouse or partner makes it harder for you to be a good parent. Some common situations are spouses or partners with poor communication skills, anger management problems, abusive behaviors, psychiatric disorders, or addictions. Guidance and exercises will be offered. In Chapter 11, I will provide help for those parents whose hurt comes from having a teen or grown child who can't get his or her life developed and launched. This will cover those children who have already moved out of the home and those who are still living there. One of the most painful experiences for a parent is to have a grown child who refuses to have a relationship or who makes that relationship extremely difficult. Chapter 12 is written for parents whose adult children have rejected them, either through constant blame or by completely cutting off contact. Guidelines will be given about when to pursue, when to back off, and how to gain serenity. Part of what makes parenting difficult is the way that children can trigger painful feelings from our own childhoods. In Chapter 13, we'll consider how your own childhood history affects your parenting and your response to your child's treatment of you. Recommendations, exercises, and guidelines will be given. Who is this book for? This book is for you, if you have lost something important during your years of raising children, your bearings or your self-esteem, the opportunity to be the parent you desperately wanted to be, or the potential to repair the damage from your own painful childhood. While there are thousands of books telling you how to better raise your children, there are none written on a topic that is just as important: healing the wounds of the parent. If this is your goal, this book is written for you. 2. Getting it wrong about parents. Defining the problem. I am often consulted by a mother or father who has, just the night before, scolded his or her toddler for some disagreeable behavior, such as biting his sister on the nose or kicking the cat while it was en route to the litter box. These parents ask if they should start saving up now for the inevitable trip to the therapist's office. They envision this child recounting to a nodding therapist the time mother cruelly and unjustly scolded him for innocently playing with his sister or sweetly petting the family cat. Mom was such a bitch. No wonder I have intimacy issues. While some parenting behaviors can create problems in children, I believe we need a much more nuanced and complete picture than the one currently being provided by therapists, politicians, and talk show hosts. A larger picture is necessary because influences such as genes, economics, peer groups, siblings, culture, and personality can cause some kids to make their mediocre parents look and feel pretty great, while others make their exceptional parents look and feel pretty awful. Some children, just by their nature, create a lot of parental error and heartache. Some environments create problems in children that have little to do with whether mom or dad are following the latest and greatest parenting advice to a T. Since parenting is a science of approximations, there is no perfect outcome or intervention for every single child. In an attempt to make a sensitive child feel safe, we could be accused of being excessively protective and not providing an environment where she could learn to tolerate anxiety and fear. In an effort to make a defiant child more compliant, we could be blamed for being overly restrictive and for missing those times when he's cooperative and interested. These mistakes may stem from our attempts to be loving, or from being worn down, intensely worried, or just incredibly irritated by having to provide feedback to a system that is constantly in need of rebalancing. While parents are expected to love all of their children equally, parents don't feel the same way about all of their children, both when they're young and when they're grown. And is it any wonder? A child who radiates affection and love toward his affection and love-starved parent is going to get a lot more response and tenderness than one who is inconsolable, defiant, and withdrawn. Difficult children of any stripe tend to bring out behaviors and emotions that we would prefer to avoid seeing in ourselves or letting the rest of the world know about. They make us lose our tempers and say stupid, hurtful things that we could never imagine saying, and pray no one overhears at the grocery store or at our in-laws' dining room table. Difficulties with children of any age can make parents feel depressed, shamed, and jealous of all those other parents who have it so easy. Perfecting parenting. Research psychologist Diana Baumrind has influenced many parents and psychologists with her theory of authoritative parenting. It's a useful concept and one that I often suggest to parents who are looking for general guidelines. From this perspective, there are 3 types of parents: authoritarian, permissive, and authoritative. Authoritarian parents are characterized by using too much control and showing very little affection. Permissive parents are characterized by showing a lot of affection and very little control. Authoritative parents show a lot of affection and a lot of control. Her findings reveal that, all things considered, authoritative parenting is the best predictor for successful development. So, one can easily conclude, if you're authoritative, then presto, mold the perfect child into a healthy adult by providing a healthy mixture of affection and control. But it doesn't always work that way. Part of what makes parenting so confusing, and therefore so treacherous, is that what works for Kid A may be useless for Kid B. Some parents are great with certain types of kids and clueless with others, better with boys than girls, better with girls than boys, better with cats than either. And some kids are just easy to raise. I met a couple of these well-behaved youths a few years ago when I went to visit a childhood friend in Los Angeles. After introducing me to his wife, we sat down in his living room. Other than the radio turned quietly to a classic rock station, the house was eerily quiet. "Oh, darn," I said, looking around at his suspiciously well-kept home. "What's the matter?" he asked. "I was hoping to meet your daughters. I thought you said they'd be here." "Oh, they're here. They're playing together in the next room. I think they're probably reading together or just hanging out. Emily, Elise, come out. I want you to meet somebody." His daughters, aged 9 and 13, came into the living room in the way that kids on TV walk into a room, smiling, peaceful, well paid. "I'd like you to meet my friend, Josh." "Hi, Josh," the older one said. "Hi, Josh," the younger one said in the same way, only younger. The girls sat down in front of us on the floor while Kenny and I talked for an hour and a half without interruption. An hour and a half. An hour and a half. "Man," I said, "how do you get them to do that?" "Oh, they're always like that. They're really good kids." Aha! There it was. They're good kids. But aren't mine good? Does practicing World Wrestling Federation takedown moves in the checkout aisle of the grocery store make them bad? Does the fact that they constantly interrupt me when I have friends over, despite my calmly asking them to wait a second? "Wait a second, honey. You're interrupting, okay? 1 second, honey, okay? Can you let me finish a freaking thought?" Make them bad kids? "Yeah, mine are good too," I said, "and they are good. It's just that they're not easy. They're not remotely easy. In fact, my boys are loud, rowdy, and constantly in motion, and because of that, a larger percentage of my parental reserves go toward containing and corralling them so they don't disassemble our house and build a skateboard ramp out of the spare parts. I was far more patient with my daughter than I am with them. Her nature was calm and introspective, which freed up time for playing, talking, or reading. What a concept! Because my boys are fraternal twins, I have my own ad hoc science experiment going, and can observe how reasonably consistent parenting results in radically different 15-year-old boys. For example, one of them seems wired for immunity to parental intervention. If a conversation is going to finally and gracelessly end in, "because I said so," it will be with him. I adore him and admire his strength of character. However, he has trouble understanding the consonant and vowel combination that forms the word no. And that means that we're going to tangle more than I wish. Authoritative parenting characterized by calm and clear limit setting? Sure, after a few martinis. The other twin is the opposite. When I'm feeling impatient, I can see the shadow of my mood inhabit him like a low-grade fever. Where the first one seems oblivious to my behavior, this one tracks it like sonar on a shifting ocean floor. It makes him sensitive and thoughtful and vulnerable to taking things much more personally than I would ever wish for him. My grown daughter lives temperamentally between the two. She is adaptive like the latter twin, but her nature bends and bends only to whip back up and smack you in the face if you aren't paying attention. She was easy when young, but reclaimed every inch in adolescence and early adulthood that she ceded in childhood. It's through my relationship with my daughter that I decided to write this book. I was married and divorced in my 20s, and remarried 19 years ago, ergo the twins. While my daughter and I are now very close, we went through several years when she was a young adult where she hardly returned my calls and expressed little interest in seeing me. Those were hard and disorienting years. Scratch that. Those were the most painful and confusing years of my life. We all expect to let go of our children at some point. In many ways, we start grieving the loss of them as they take their first wobbling steps away from us. But no parent wants it like that. Not years later when you find yourself staring at a 3x5 photo of her when she was sitting on your shoulders at the age of 3, her head happily and innocently inclined against yours, smiling at a blue, cloudless sky. Never when you want so badly to be a good, loving parent and reap the rewards that seem so obvious and secure in a world where, increasingly, so little seems guaranteed. Never anticipating a future when you would have to constantly try to stitch something together, a weekend, a day, a letter, a phone call to try and mend the torn tissues of connection caused by the bomb crater of divorce and its unexploded shells. Never, never, never. Yet, whether you're divorced or married, it can happen. And, as judged by my clients and friends, it happens a lot. I constantly hear from mothers and fathers who are carrying deep feelings of loss and longing, guilt and grief, anger and shame, regret about how they treated their kids, regret about how their kids treat them, regret about how all of their lives turned out. Regret, regret, regret. And they all want to know, what are you supposed to do with those feelings? Who is supposed to understand your waking and sleeping sorrow about the life your child is living with or without you? Or the worry that your child may never, ever get it together and become a full-functioning adult? Or the prospect of never again seeing or being close to one of the most important people in your world? How do you admit what you're feeling to others when doing so risks inviting more shame from their well-meaning, but often hurtful or disorienting advice? Advice generated from the premise, however inexplicit, that you must have done something wrong to create distance or problems in a relationship that most assume is inviolate. I can write about this because those years seem safely behind me, or so I hope. Whatever needed to be bridged has been.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?